Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, I just got power restarted in my home. I spent the entire day without electricity. I believe I'll only have it for a few hours, so I'm going to make the best of it. Let's get started. Breitbart News is reporting that CNN and NBC paid left wing Capitol rioter $35,000 each for footage of violence. They both paid left wing filmmaker John Sullivan 35 grand for his footage of violence during the Capitol riot, according to court documents filed by his attorneys. Politico reported Tuesday that a federal judge allowed Sullivan to keep his Twitter and Facebook accounts, but ordered him to end his involvement with a business he founded that the Justice Department says promotes and glorifies violent protest. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that CNN and NBC directly funded a domestic terrorist involved in the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol building. They should be held liable for Officer Sicknick's death. They should be held liable for Ashley Babbitt's death. Let's look at the definition of terrorism from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Terrorism, the calculated use of violence to create a general climate of fear in a population and thereby to bring about a particular political objective. Terrorism has been practiced by political organizations with both rightist and leftist objectives, by nationalistic and religious groups, by revolutionaries, and even by state institutions such as armies, intelligence services, and police. So, the calculated use of violence to create a general climate of fear in a population to bring about a general political change. So basically, you could say that the $2 billion caused in 2020 was domestic terrorism. Moreover, Politico noted, the defendant John Sullivan of Utah has maintained that he attends ruckus demonstrations as a journalist, sharing videos throughout his Insurgents USA website and social media platforms. Sullivan's defense attorney even filed invoices with the court showing that CNN and NBC each paid Sullivan's firm 35 grand last month for for the rights to the video he filmed of chaotic scenes outside and inside the Capitol, including the deadly shooting of protester Ashley Babbitt. However, prosecutors contend that Sullivan is not a mere bystander or chronicler of protests. Instead, they say he actively encourages violence, telling viewers how to make Molotov cocktails and evade identification by police. He was arrested last month on charges stemming from the January 6th riot, including interfering with police during a civil disorder. Sullivan was later hit with an additional charge, obstruction of Congress. So, CNN and NBC allowing John Sullivan to be their avatar should be held liable for any of his actions, any of his crimes committed that they paid him to commit. Then they should also be held liable. Again, Sicknick and Babbitt's family should be suing the pants off of CNN and NBC for being the corporate sponsor for domestic terrorism. If this ends up being true, which looks to be the case, if John Sullivan's attorneys basically said, or John Sullivan's attorney basically is saying, hey, we have the receipts of where CNN and NBC each paid my client $35,000 each, then CNN and NBC directly funded domestic terrorism in the events that occurred on January 6th, and they should be held accountable. But of course, that'll never happen. Update: Sullivan was also reportedly paid by other networks, including $5,000 from Showtime's The Circus. As Breitbart News noted in January, Sullivan founded Insurgents USA during George Floyd riots last year. Sullivan claimed to be a journalist merely documenting events, but he allegedly had no journalistic credentials, and evidence presented by federal prosecutors allegedly shows him joining in the violence and destruction. Twitter has apparently banned Sullivan's account, though it waited 2 weeks to do so. So they waited 2 weeks to ban the account of a domestic terrorist directly funded by CNN and NBC, but they waited minutes and hours to ban Donald Trump, who said peacefully and patriotically, have your voices heard. Do you not see the insanity of which is going on right now? This is bananas, friends. And not only that, but if federal prosecutors are if they have evidence basically show him joining in on the violence and destruction, that would confirm that CNN and NBC directly funded domestic terrorism activities that had occurred at the Capitol building on January 6th. And that is highly disturbing. And they should be held accountable for any of his actions. Basically, it would be as if CNN themselves were attempting to burn down the Capitol. If it turns out that the evidence of what John Sullivan did would make it appear that he was stirring the pot, then it may as well have been CNN or NBC basically handing him whatever instrument he used to join in on that violence and destruction, right? So if he wielded a baseball bat and were smashing glass tables, then it may as well have been CNN or NBC providing him with that baseball bat to smash that table, basically saying, go do what you do, friend. Go be a domestic terrorist. And that is disgusting. But before I get to my next story, how about you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you wish to contribute to the show, please go to notcensoredyet.com/donate. You'll find links available, both cryptocurrency and fiat, whatever works for you, works for us. And basically, we're revamping the website right now. Every little bit helps. We want to stay independent from outside influence and basically be held accountable to you, the viewer. So changes to the website that are going to happen is we're going to create a news aggregator, basically find the most centrist sources we can find. They are very hard to find, believe it or not, and pepper it in, salt and pepper that in with left-wing and right-wing sources, because I feel like to get the best handle of what's going on, it's best to read a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right, a little bit on the center, and then basically use all that information to try to figure out the most common thread, and that's usually what happened. And then also, I'm in the process of starting an independent fact checker, which is basically going to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whether it's true or not. And I'll also clarify and go, this is an opinion and it cannot be fact checked, and this, or it cannot be fact checked, and this is why. And I feel like that's highly important because fact checkers seem to be fact checking more opinions than statements of fact lately, and it is highly concerning. So let's jump over to Axios. Scoop: Biden to use more inclusive immigration terms. The Biden administration is urging officials to use more inclusive terms for immigrants, including replacing the word aliens with non-citizen, Axios has learned. Why it matters: the Trump administration referred to unauthorized immigrants as illegal aliens and described border crossings as an invasion. The new terms point to President Biden's more welcoming immigration stance overall. According to an email sent Tuesday to U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services officials reviewed by Axios, Acting Director Tracy Renaud recently signed a memo encouraging the more inclusive language in the agency's outreach efforts, internal documents, and in overall communication. A DHS spokesperson did not immediately respond to calls and an email seeking comment. Between the lines, other changes include using undocumented non-citizen or undocumented individual rather than illegal alien, and integration or civic integration instead of assimilation. And this is important, and they actually explain that on the third bullet. Immigration advocates will likely applaud the changes. Hardliners will not. By statute, alien literally means a person not a U.S. citizen or national. That is not offensive, and neither is assimilation, said Robert Law, a former Trump administration official, now working at the Restrictionist Center for Immigration Studies. So this kind of cuts close to home for me. My wife is from Mexico. She has a green card. She is a non-citizen resident of the United States of America, meaning that if Joe Biden has his way, she will no longer be just an alien resident, right? Or a non-citizen resident. You're going to have illegal aliens with the same title of non-citizen as my wife, who we spent thousands of dollars and many a months trying to get that process concluded. And for what? So criminals, people who cross the border illegally, will now have the same title as people who spent the time, people who spent the money, people who did it the correct way. And there will be no differentiation between the two groups, or it's going to be so obscure that if you ask the question, you're going to potentially get sued for some sort of discrimination. That is unacceptable. Words have meanings. Changing the word alien to non-citizen should be offensive to every non-citizen resident, basically every green card holder who chooses to not become a U.S. citizen in the United States. That should be highly offensive to them, because basically they're making you less They are bringing people who are criminals, because guess what? When you break the laws of a sovereign country, you are a criminal in that country. They're basically glorifying criminals and penalizing people who did it the right way, who spent the time, who spent the money to check the blocks to ensure that they will better America by coming to this country. They know they not only benefit themselves, but they benefit the United States. And guess what? That no longer matters, because feelings are more important than facts. And that's highly disturbing. And my tweet, didn't gain a lot of traction, but basically, my wife, who came to the US legally, is considered a non citizen resident of the USA. Words have meanings. Let's stop this push for the unadulterated tolerance of criminality. Somebody responded, that's interesting. Hopefully, Congress and the media consider this potential issue. And I don't think they will, because the Biden used to be a anti-illegal immigration, very a staunch advocate for that. He was against illegal immigration. He believed that borders exist for a reason. But now that he's just a empty vessel, just being filled by whoever whispers in his ear last, it seems to be he's turning into a progressive, and it is highly concerning, because how are you supposed to be a sovereign nation with borders and laws if people are allowed to cross into your country willy-nilly and then have the same title as people who spent years potentially and thousands of dollars potentially to have the privilege of living in the United States? And now people who just happen to cross the border illegally now receive that same title because it makes you feel better. And it makes you feel better to call them a non-citizen as opposed to an illegal alien. And guess what? You are going to lose the trust of your constituents if you keep driving this very progressive agenda, because it's going to. I know my wife was like, "What the heck is going on here? Why are we being penalized?" Because that's essentially what it's going to end up feeling like. Is my wife is going to end up, or we as a family are going to end up feeling penalized for having brought her to the country the correct way. Why what we could have just waited a few years and then wouldn't have had to wait months for her to come here, with our daughter having to live in Mexico because there was a problem with her visa, and basically the immigration officials wouldn't allow her to fly back to the United States. And so her and my daughter stayed in Mexico for nearly a year as we spent thousands of dollars to fix the government's problem, because we did it the right way. And but now there is no right way. You can just come here however you want and you have the same title. It's ridiculous. So that's going to be it for now, friends. I'll try to post up another video as long as I have electricity. Until then, I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.